Welcome to the Pocket. I'm your host, Scooter, and here for you guys today, I'm going to be giving you my Super Bowl overview and my prediction. If you want my breakdown and take right away, skip the 2 minutes and use the timestamps to find the rest of the topics you want. And who have we got facing off in the Super Bowl? Chiefs Eagles. Oh my God. There is probably not two other teams in the NFL that I would rather not see win a Super Bowl than these two teams. I mean, if it was the Chiefs, it would just be boring, right? I mean, a three-peat, come on, who wants to see that? Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift all over the media for a whole nother summer. Oh my goodness. Yada, yada, yada. But Eagles, I don't want to see that either. As you could tell, I'm a Giants fan. Look at that. Look at that jersey right there. Normally it wouldn't be there if it wasn't relevant for this game. So you already know that I'm not happy with the Eagles either. But the reality is one of these two teams is going to go home a winner and a Super Bowl champion. So I'm going to try to help you guys figure out who that's going to be. How are we going to do that? First, we're going to go over the history between these two teams in this era. We're going to talk about the previous matchups between them and see what kind of clues that can give us to what's going to happen in this game. We'll refresh this season and these playoffs and how they got here, along with refreshing our minds on the total playoff experience for both of these teams and their quarterbacks. Then we'll move into the matchup. We'll first go over injuries to monitor, and then we'll talk about the rosters, right? Where are the advantages and disadvantages? And then what are the keys to success? Finally, after talking about the teams' histories with each other, about this particular matchup itself, we'll go into Vegas's projection and then finally close it out with my take. Since Jalen Hurts has become the Eagles' full-time starter, they've taken on the Chiefs 3 times before this matchup. In that first matchup in 2021, week 4, it was Jalen Hurts' first full season starting, and you know what? He actually had a pretty good day. He had 387 passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns. Considering what we know him for now, this is honestly really shocking. He also had 8 carries on the ground for 47 yards, but he had no help from his running backs. It looks like he had about 50 combined yards from his running backs. Pretty ridiculous. But Patrick Mahomes was insane. He threw for 5 touchdowns. 3 of those went to Tyreek. Obviously, the Chiefs won this game 42-30. So even though the Chiefs were already established, the Eagles were able to at least put up some points with this offense. But this was a long time ago. And I'm not thinking that there's too much you can take away from this. The second time that they faced off was in the Super Bowl of the 2022-2023 season. Now, in this game, most of you, if you watch it, would know that this was a great game that was unfortunately decided by an infamous holding call. Now, not exactly. Of course, there was lots of things that could happen before and after that, but it was a very crucial call that put the Chiefs in a position to chew up some more clock and end the game with a lead and a win. Now, the Eagles had a lead at half, a 10-point lead at this half, but in the end of the day, the Chiefs were far better in the second half. The Eagles' defense completely collapsed. The takeaways of this game were that the Eagles weren't really ready, and the defense was kind of overrated. The Chiefs it was just the same thing. The Chiefs are the Chiefs. The Eagles, they went into this game with, their only playoff experience being blown out by the Bucs. So just them being there was a total surprise and a great accomplishment for them. But unfortunately for them, in their path to that Super Bowl, their regular season schedule was quite easy. Now, they could have made up for that in the playoffs, and it was out of their control, but they versed the Giants, right? And I guess that's your reward for being like the number 1 seed. But after that, they versed the 49ers, which should have been their true test. But then both of their quarterbacks got injured in that game. So it was kind of a takeaway that, maybe the Eagles weren't quite as good as we thought, but that soon changed. The third matchup between these two teams was the following season. And I think it was week 10 or 11. I can't remember which one exactly. But the Eagles actually ended up winning this game 21-17. And now there was an infamous moment in this game, too, except it was committed by the Chiefs. Marcus Valdes-Scantling dropped a deep ball that would have put the Chiefs in a position to steal this game with a win. As you can see, they were down 4. But the Eagles did still earn the win in this game. Obviously, they held the Chiefs to 17 points, and that was their, every single time they faced off, they've held them to less points. And I don't think that's some direct correlation, but the Chiefs haven't really changed all too much. And whether this is a reflection of their offense being able to chew up more clock or their defense being better, I think in the end of the day, it's just reflective that they're a better overall team. And I would say what this makes me think is something I kind of mentioned, that their defense looks better every single time they play this Chiefs team. And, the Eagles look a little bit better on offense. And it seems like the Eagles' moves obviously are paying off over the years. But I mean, really, a lot of these other teams in the AFC that play the Chiefs, it seems like they're stuck that no matter what they do or improve, that they're always just going to lose to them. But this Chiefs team did manage to beat them last year, and like I said, it's been trending that way. So they certainly haven't beaten them yet or anything, but I would say this is the best team that they've gone up against Kansas City with. And I don't know if I can say the same for the Chiefs. Let's talk about how each team has gotten to this point in this season. How did they get to the Super Bowl this year? Well, for the Chiefs, their season started off pretty strong. They beat the Ravens in a sick season opener, and then they beat the Bengals the following week, back when everyone thought they were still AFC Championship or AFC Divisional Round bound. But then they had it easy for a couple weeks, and then near the end of that period of time, the Broncos held their offense to 16 points, despite the Broncos still losing. And then the following week after that, they lost to the Bills. After that, they proceeded to win every game they had until week 18, finishing off the Texans and the Steelers, two pretty impressive wins down the stretch, and finishing as 15-2 and as the 1 seed. Now for the Eagles, their first quarter of the year was a little shaky. They were 2-2, and it wasn't like the offense was bad or the defense was bad, but they both wouldn't show up on the same game. So it was just kind of inconsistency. But after that, they had an impressive 7-game winning streak before versing the Ravens and winning. So that was a huge turning point for this Eagles team in my eyes, that they had beaten the elite teams that they had gone up against at this point, and whatever creases they had, they had ironed those out, and they were rocking and rolling and getting ready for the playoffs. So they fell asleep a bit versus the Panthers after that, but finished strong every game for the rest of the season. That Hurts was healthy, finishing with a record of 14-3 and as the 2 seed in the NFC. All right, now let's move into playoff experience, starting with the Chiefs. For them, they have been the most dominant playoff team since the New England Patriots and Tom Brady. 2-0 in the wild card round in the Mahomes era. This is their fifth first round bye. Wow. Now, the rules used to be that two teams, the top two seeds, would get the first round bye, and they've benefited from that certainly more than once, I believe. But in the end of the day, this is still just insane, right? And then it just gets crazier. So you're basically undefeated in the wild card, and you're undefeated in the divisional round, 6-0. Made his seventh AFC championship this year. Now he's 5-2. In order, he beat the Tennessee Titans led by Ryan Tannehill. They had Derrick Henry, but it's like, okay, Ryan Tannehill. All right, I see you. But then he beat the Bills and Josh Allen. He beat the Bengals and Joe Burrow. He beat the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. And then he beat the Bills and Josh Allen again. The two teams he lost to were Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. That team went on to beat the Rams in the Super Bowl. And then Joe Burrow's Bengals, who went on to lose to the Rams, funny enough. So that was his AFC championship performance. Pretty remarkable to only lose to Tom Brady and Joe Burrow, who hasn't won a Super Bowl yet, but I think we all know how good he is. And then in the Super Bowl, 3-1 in the Super Bowl. Now, I do have a bit of a gripe here. He beat Jimmy Garoppolo, Jalen Hurts, and Brock Purdy. Not the most incredible lineup. Jalen Hurts, definitely the best guy in there. But it just makes it really tough to get a read. Number one, because obviously he's already played Jalen, and I'm kind of throwing those three into the same basket. But I would really like to sort of make a gauge and say, all right, well, if this is Tom Brady and he loses to Tom Brady, and these are, the Jimmy Garoppolos and Brock Purdy's of the world, where does Jalen Hurts fall on this scale? Because we know all of those NFC teams are great that make it through, right? So I feel like that is a great way to try to determine if someone's going to beat the Chiefs, is how good is this new quarterback of theirs. I know Jalen Hurts isn't new, but you understand what I mean. If it was someone new, we know who Jalen Hurts is. Although a lot of people are going to say that he's much improved this year, which he is, but it doesn't mean that he still wasn't miles away from where Mahomes is, okay? Now, they won all three of those Super Bowls, losing by 2 possessions at one point in the second half, which is pretty remarkable. So even though they aren't the best quarterbacks, those types of quarterbacks are at their best when they've got the lead. So the fact that none of them were able to close it out is pretty remarkable. And now that's just the team, Mahomes and whatnot. Let's talk about the coaching staff. Steve Spagnuolo has elite experience as well. He's got 5 Super Bowls, 2 against Brady with the Giants, and now 2 with the Chiefs. So excuse me, that means 4. He signed with the Niners. He signed after the Niners Super Bowl, so he didn't get that third Super Bowl yet. Now, Andy Reid has gotten there for years without Mahomes, with Alex Smith, not to the Super Bowl, but to the playoffs. And then with the Eagles back in the day, I believe that was the McNabb days. So we know how great Andy Reid is, probably the best coach in the game right now. Last year's playoff run was a bit more impressive, in my opinion, than this year's, but it is what it is. They faced the Texans this year, and they just kind of took care of business. A couple things went their way, and that just is what it is. And then they took down the almighty Bills in the AFC Championship for the fourth time. So, they've really established that they aren't going anywhere. That's for sure. But it doesn't mean that I can't say that the other playoff runs are more impressive. So that they arrive to the Super Bowl with all this playoff experience in this season. They arrive with elite coaching, an elite quarterback, and experience as a team. They have a top defense that reflects all of those qualities and a clutch offense that just always sorts to seem to get their way, right? So that's the Chiefs kind of summed up in terms of all their playoff experience. This regular season, has any of that changed our minds? Nope. This is who they are. We know this is them, and this is who you have to beat if you want to win the Super Bowl. Now, for the Eagles' playoff experience in the Jalen Hurts era, all 4 years that he was a full-time starter, they made the playoffs. In the wild card round, they are 1-2, both losses to the Buccaneers, but this year they did manage to get a win versus the Packers, and it is really more like 2-2 considering they did have a first round bye one. So call it 2-2 in the wild card. For the divisional round, they are 2-0 in the divisional round, beating the New York Giants led by Daniel Jones, and then the Rams led by Matthew Stafford this year, which was definitely the more impressive of the two wins. They actually sort of had to hold on to that one. Now, in the NFC Championship games, they are also 2-0 in the Conference Championship, beating the quarterbackless 49ers and the Washington Commanders this year. I would say probably beating the Commanders was more impressive because they had someone with a UCL that could throw the football, unlike the 49ers. But yeah, I guess the takeaway here is that, if they win the wild card, then they're going to the Super Bowl. And I actually said that previewing the season, previewing the playoffs, I really should have stuck to that, but hey, it is what it is. And then in the Super Bowl, they were 0-1, losing to Mahomes by 3. Ouch. Really, really close. Almost had it, but yeah, it's there to be had. Now, Sirianni, I've given a hard time with the playoff experience and managing these situations, but he's definitely managing the team and the culture much better this year. Things have really quieted down and they're just kind of taking care of business and rolling. Now, Fangio, he's been the defensive coordinator for the 49ers between 2011 and 2014. So that was when they made the Super Bowl with Kaepernick. So he's got some experience. And then in the past, Fangio was credited with having this quarter scheme that's supposed to stop the Mahomes and Chiefs explosive plays because, they used to use Tyreek to produce most of their offense. Mahomes did adapt to this. They let go of Tyreek and they run much more of that dink and dunk offense now. So if you protect the football and you eat the hits they take as, they're playing off, they see you catch the ball, they come crashing down. You can score on a defense like that, with guys like Kelsey, Juju, and D-Hop. You just got to be patient and make all the right throws, and it's much easier said than done, obviously. But then, like I said, you gotta avoid turnovers and getting completely rocked by these Eagles defenders. That's completely loaded at every position except for linebacker 2, where they lost Nakobe Dean in the Packers game. Now, Kellen Moore, he's got limited playoff experience. I think he's got some with the Cowboys and stuff, but nothing too crazy. This is definitely this coaching staff and this team, this organization's best run since the 2017 one, especially since you actually have your franchise quarterback, being the one that get you back there. And Hurts was a little rusty, but once they got it done versus Green Bay, Saquon shuts the door on the Rams and they completely stomp the Commanders. Here they arrive looking like they're playing their best football and they're ready to go. What are they bringing with them to the Super Bowl? What does all this playoff experience in this regular season mean for them? It means it has shown us that they have a truly elite defense, an elite run game, and problems at every position. So basically the best roster in football. Both their defense and their offense can carry the load depending on the game script, and they're one of the most matchup-proof teams in the league because of that defensive run game. So despite the Eagles consistently proving themselves and having all these advantages this year, the Chiefs are on another level still. when it comes to playoff experience, because the Eagles are certainly a superior roster in so many ways. But if we're just talking about playoff experience right here and what you're bringing to the Super Bowl, it's not just your roster, it's your experience as well. Quickly, before we really dive into the matchup, we're going to talk about the injuries that you all need to be monitoring before this game, because this video is going to go up a week before the Super Bowl happens. So if any of this changes before the game, I'm not going to be able to tell you. So keep monitoring these before the game. For the Chiefs, it's plain and simple. Nobody's questionable who isn't already out for the season. The only guy who's doubtful is Sky Moore, who's like a depth wide receiver. So it looks like pretty much everyone is a full participant and ready to go. Now for the Eagles, it's pretty much the same thing. They're resting quite a bit of starters, but that is what it is. They got a couple guys not participating, but the questionable guys. This is what we're looking at here. We got tight end CJ Uzama, who's like their second tight end behind Dallas Goedert. So that wouldn't be too catastrophic, but being able to run two tight end sets is very good. Brandon Graham, their depth veteran defensive end who has won a Super Bowl before and made a big play in that game, is trying to come back from that. It says elbow, but I believe it was because he tore his triceps. So that would be pretty incredible if he was able to come back. And Brenton Covey, he's their depth wide receiver, probably their four, maybe their five. He's questionable. And then you have Kenneth Gainwell, who got hurt in the Commanders game with a concussion and a knee, who, although he's definitely not as good as Saquon, actually is a little bit more important than you would think. Thank goodness for them, Will Shipley looked great in last week's game, so this might not hurt too bad, but Kenneth Gainwell's been a reliant guy for them for a long time. We're just going to go over the depth charts, all right? So at quarterback for the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes. Their started running back is listed as Kareem Hunt. They also got Pacheco, who's been slowly working his way back. And then P. Ryan, who, although has been pretty quiet this year, made a huge play to get a first down to, ice the Bills game. Now, at wide receiver, it gets pretty complicated for them. It seems like Xavier Worthy is their number one, the speedster who they drafted in the first round this year. Juju Smith-Schuster would probably be the starting slot guy. He's come back. He was in the last Super Bowl against the Eagles. He actually drew the holding call from James Bradbury. And then they also have Hollywood Brown, who came back from his injury. I believe he dislocated his shoulder or something, but now he's finally back. So it's just good to have him, right, as a 2 or a 3. That's not too bad. And then DeAndre Hopkins, who can also play that X role pretty well and is going to be really important, as I'm going to bring up later. So that's 4 not too bad guys, but they're definitely not as elite as we're going to talk about on the Eagles side. I mean, I wouldn't even really say any of these guys are bona fide number one wide receivers. I mean, Worthy looks pretty good, but even if he's a great deep threat, he's not doing the physical wide receiver stuff for you, right? The stuff that D-Hop would do for you in his prime. So that's a wide receiver group. At tight end, we know they have Travis Kelce, but they also have Noah Gray, who tends to get in there more frequently than other tight end twos. So don't forget about him. And then the Chiefs' offensive line, which is known for being very good, and it is. At left tackle, they have Joe Thuney. Left guard, Mike Caliendo. Center, Creed Humphrey, who might be the best in the league now that Jason Kelsey's gone. Right guard, Trey Smith. And then right tackle, Juwan Taylor, who, although he's been a little banged up this year, has been pretty good for them when he's been healthy. Now for the defense, this is what we mentioned was definitely the more elite side of this football team, but it's not really like they have, a bunch of superstars. It's just they have a lot of really solid players. At DN, their edge guys, they got Karlaftis and Mike Dana, and then inside they have Chris Jones and Tershawn Wharton, and they move all these guys all over the place, with the exception, or not with the exception, they move Chris Jones around quite a bit on this defensive line, which in turn, kind of moves around the other guys, or it gets some of the other deeper defensive tackles in there. But they do a lot of unique stuff there. At linebacker, they have Drew Tranquil, and then they have Nick Bolton and Leo Chanel. Now, Nick Bolton actually made a lot of huge plays in the last Super Bowl. He returned the fumble for a touchdown. There was a second one that he returned for a touchdown that got overturned. But, either way, he was making a lot of big plays. And then the Chiefs, maybe their best player on defense besides Chris Jones, Trent McDuffie, who plays slot corner, but, he can go all over the place. He's great at blitzing. He's great in this Spagnuolo scheme, and he's like their secret weapon on third down. Just when you least expect it, that's when they send that nickel blitz, and it's just so hard to defend. It's so hard for the line to be able to pick it up. And then at safety, they have Justin Reed, and at free safety, they have Brian Cook. Jalen Watson and Chamari Connor rotate in there. Now let's talk about the Eagles. At quarterback, they have Jalen Hurts. We know who he is. And they also have Kenny Pickett at their backup. So just in case he goes down, they don't have too bad of a backup. At running back, they got Saquon Barkley, who's an all-pro. And then if Kenneth Gainwell is out, rookie Will Shipley looked pretty good last week. At wide receiver, oh man, this is where this team starts to get scary. You have A.J. Brown, who's, depending on who you ask, a top 5 guy. I would say he probably is. Then they have Devontae Smith, top 5 wide receiver 2. And then they have Jahan Dotson, who is still finding his way in the league, but a former first-round pick. They also have Johnny Wilson, who's built like Megatron. He just hasn't quite figured it out yet. And moving on to tight ends, Dallas Goedert. We know how good he is. He looked great in the last Super Bowl that these two teams played, and he's looked great this year, although he wasn't as great last year. I've always believed that he was one of the better tight ends in the NFL. Grant Calcaterra, who's going to be their tight end too. Of course, they could have CJ Uzomah healthy, but that's going to be their guy for now. And then there's Eagles offensive line, which is certainly the best in the NFL right now. Jordan Mailata at left tackle, Landon Dickerson at left guard, Cam Jurgens at center, Mekhi Becton at right guard, Lane Johnson at right tackle. Switching to their defense now, their defensive line. They have Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter on the interior. Milton Williams will rotate in there. And then on the edge, they have Nolan Smith. They have Josh Sweat, Bryce Huff. And then at the linebacker position, they have Zach Bond. And then they did have Nakobe Dean, but it looks like now it's Jeremiah Trotter Jr. or Oren Burks. And then at their secondary, free safety and strong safety, they have Reed Blankenship and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. At starting corner, they have Quinyon Mitchell, the rookie, Darius Slay, who is a veteran who might have played his last game in Philadelphia. And then at nickel, they have Cooper DeJean. They still got Keely Ringo for depth and Avonte Maddox. So that's a defense that I see pretty much no holes in. I mean, I don't see like an Aaron Donald or like, absolutely unstoppable level player besides Jalen Carter, which is very, very funny because it seems like the Chiefs and Eagles defensive roster construction is very, very similar. You have that elite beast up in the trenches, and then other than that, you have a lot of, players who are great, right? And maybe on other teams you would be convinced they're all pros, but because they're on this Eagles team, it's just so tough to tell. Let's take these two rosters now and let's compare the two of them and see who I'm going to give the edge to in very high priority categories, starting off with coaching. For me, this is going to be the Chiefs, although the Eagles have done a good job this year. Maybe if this was a GM award, I would give it to the Eagles, but for coaching, it's got to go to, Andy Reid, Steve Spagnuolo. They're the best duo in the league. The Eagles coaches have been great this year, but they haven't proven half as much as this Chiefs coaching staff has. Moving on to quarterback, come on, it's Chiefs by quite a bit. Patrick Mahomes is the best in the league. He might be the best we've ever seen. And Jalen Hurts is great, but he's not that yet, okay? Offensive line, this is going to be the Eagles. That's easy. We just went over it. They basically have a Pro Bowl or All-Pro at every position. You're lucky if you have 3 Pro Bowl offensive linemen these days. I mean, just ask the Giants how they're doing. If we even just inherited 2 Eagles offensive linemen, we would probably be average. But in the end of the day, yeah, Eagles have definitely the better offensive line. I mean, the Chiefs O-line is good. It is great, actually. And they play clean, right? Yeah, they don't draw penalties, but I don't think they're as dominant as the Eagles' offensive line is. Okay, now for the weapons, this is Eagles by a mile. It's not even close. I mean, Kelsey is on the Chiefs, and I did mention how they've got a nice sprinkling of wide receivers, but it's nothing compared to what the Eagles have. I mean, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, considering him like a wide receiver too, Saquon Barkley and Dallas Goedert it's debatable that they're all top 5 at their position. I don't think anyone has a more well-rounded cast of weapons than this Eagles team does. And then for the defense, you could go either way with this, but I'm actually going to say that it's a tie. And I alluded to it before that their defensive roster construction is very similar. If you want to say the Eagles have better players on defense, fine. But I'm going to say that Spagnuolo is a better defensive coordinator than Vic Fangio, who I like to refer to as the Penguin. I love seeing him up in his box doing his devious little defensive schemes to stop offenses. Oh, he's just like the Penguin. But yeah, I would say I'm going to give Spagnuolo the edge, and those two things offset, and more or less is a tie. So overall, comparing these, who gets the advantage in these categories, the Eagles certainly have a better overall team, but the Chiefs were in that situation every Super Bowl. where the other team was a better overall team. And you might come at me and say, Scooter, what are you talking about? The team that wins is the better overall team. Well, yeah, I know, obviously, but I'm saying quarterback, right? If you separate quarterback and compare two rosters, you're getting two completely different results, okay, than if you just compare regular rosters, okay? It's really, you got to go one way or another. You're either paying a quarterback as much money as you possibly can, or you're loading your roster and trying to get a bridge guy to do it for you. So the Chiefs, despite this being in this situation 4 times, have managed to win 3. So this is not new territory for them. The coaching and Mahomes just always closes the gap. It always seems like, that when they played the 49ers the first time around, I thought the 49ers were gonna win, and then I saw the staggering difference in what I expected to happen. And as I haven't forgotten about it since then. I really haven't. So it really is how much of a better team you can have than the Chiefs, out using that to outweigh the Mahomes factor, is what you're trying to do. Okay. And I would say the Eagles have done just about as much as they possibly can to do that going into this game. So let's talk about the keys and what I think are going to most greatly impact this game. Starting off with the Chiefs. I mentioned about how Vic Fangio, the Penguin, likes to run this quarter scheme that was notorious for being one of the few defenses to slow down the explosive Chiefs offense. Now, since then, Mahomes has adapted and learned how to be patient and take what the defense gives him. But the Chiefs still need to have offensive weapons who are going to excel, execute their assignments so that Mahomes can do that. He can't do it all by himself. So, how do you beat quarters? Well, the defense is backed off. The 2 corners and the 2 safeties, they are like half manned up on someone, but if someone takes their vertical alley down the field, then they have to ride with them, which is typically the wide receiver they're covering. And if they're not, then they just kind of stay back and wait for the play to happen. So like I said, there's 2 ways. Since they're all backed off, you can hit something underneath and get yards after catch and just take that over and over and over until they commit to covering something underneath, and then you take the next level, right? The more intermediate stuff, or they, completely blitz you or something and try to confuse you, and then you throw it over the top. Okay. So that's how you can do that. You can pick them apart, but also you can hit cover 4 deep. You just have to really thread a needle, because although you have 4 guys in deep zones, they might track someone all the way across to the other side of the field. Say it's a deep crosser, that, say, a safety in the middle of the field picks him up, he's going to follow him to that other side of the field, right? So it actually creates a lot of vacated areas, and it's a really hard defense to communicate. So if you get enough crossing routes or some kind of play action shot that throws off the safeties, linebackers, and the whole play, you can hit a deep shot to a guy like Worthy, just like they did with Tyreek in the Super Bowl. I'm not saying they were running cover 4, but it was just a very strenuous defense to play against. And you just need some creative play to break open, and that's the 2 ways that they're going to be able to do it. So those 2 wide receivers for me are going to be keys for the Chiefs: DeAndre Hopkins and Xavier Worthy. I think Juju will get his receptions. I think Hollywood will get his receptions. But I think this is who Andy Reid has in mind when he wants to, really draw up some big plays he has in mind for big moments, like some third downs. If it's third and short, I expect Hopkins. If it's, say, second and long, I expect Worthy, right? And if it's maybe first and 10 and he just wants to catch him off guard, run a jet sweep to Worthy. So they do have 2 weapons they can attack quarters with. Now, what's another way you can attack quarters? It doesn't have to do with the wide receivers. It has to do with the quarterback and his decision making. So if everyone backs off, it's not like man coverage where you could have everyone run to one side of the field and you can take off and have no one accounting for you. But since they are backed off, it leaves a lot of space for you to scramble for first down. So Mahomes' legs is going to be my second key for the Chiefs, is that him scrambling for third downs, and inversely, the Eagles being able to contain him within the pocket is going to be key for them stopping him in the second half when he inevitably starts coming back. And now my third factor is going to be Chris Jones and George Karlaftis. Now this is, you could call this a cop-out, but I'm just mentioning the Eagles' offensive line has sustained a couple of injuries, and they should be fully healthy by the time this game rolls around. But, how much disruption they're able to cause to Jalen Hurts on their own is going to take a lot of heat off of Spagnuolo and what he's going to have to do, because they're going to be very much committing to stop the run, which means the Eagles are going to have an opportunity to pass the ball. And if this pass rush can't get home when that happens, you're going to see another 40-yard post route go for a touchdown to A.J. Brown. And you don't want to see that. So this pass rush is going to have to get pressure with force sometimes. And then finally, Steve Spagnuolo, just in general, on third down especially, but just in general, Steve Spagnuolo, is he going to be able to do it again, where he comes up with a strategy to stop this Eagles team? Well, he's done it once before, but it didn't really hold up for that whole Super Bowl. It was very shaky. Actually, oppositely, it was really bad in the beginning, and then it got much better. But his ability to draw up those nickel blitzes, like we were talking about with McDuffie, last time they played, even though the Eagles won, they were getting all over them, and they held the Eagles to their lowest point total that game as well. So I'm going to be looking out for the different types of blitzes that Steve Spagnuolo runs. Should be always something really fun to keep track of. Now let's move on to the Eagles' key factors. Starting things off, I want to bounce right off of what I said and say Kellen Moore is going to be in a battle with Steve Spagnuolo. This is going to happen where the Eagles likely, because of their roster, are going to start off the game hot on offense, and they're going to score some points, right? And it's going to look pretty similar to the last Super Bowl. Whether it's high or low scoring, the Eagles are going to have a lead, in which you're going to think, oh, now they're going to hold it. This is good for them. But then Spagnuolo is going to finally come through with his adjustments, and Kellen Moore is going to have a counterpunch. And once that happens, it's really going to put him to the test, and that's where I really start to question if he's going to be able to do it. But if he can, that is a key to victory right there. If he can keep producing offense into the third quarter, through the fourth quarter, at least move the ball, then that is ideal. Plus, the defenses are getting tired anyway. In such a long day like the Super Bowl, you should be scoring points in the fourth quarter. Now up next for the Eagles is going to be Zach Bond. And there's a very important reason for this. Someone who I've really not said much about at all is Travis Kelce. Because I'm just kind of assuming he's going to have his usual 7 or 8 receptions for 100 yards and a touchdown, even though he's looked pretty mid all year up until the playoffs. So he's going to be a big part of this game for the Chiefs. He always is. But the Eagles have a linebacker, much like they had last time with TJ Edwards, who could actually cover Kelce a little bit man-to-man. And teams run a lot more man-to-man in the playoffs. And if they can man up Kelce one-on-one with Bond and just let it be, you don't have to bracket him or anything, that would be most ideal. So Bond's been an absolute beast all year. He's going to be facing a heavy challenge because you're not just facing Kelce, right? You're facing Kelce, all 3 options that he can pick, and Mahomes being on the same page as him. It's going to be a tough job for him, but should be very interesting. And then finally, my last X factor and key to success for the Eagles is purely Saquon Barkley. Just him. This Eagles offensive line is going to create holes at some point in this game. They're going to verse loaded boxes where they're at a bit of a disadvantage, but the blocks are going to be there. Saquon Barkley is going to have opportunities in this game to make juke moves that have never mattered more in his entire life. And you better believe he's going to try his damnedest to make those defenders miss, to hit those stiff arms, or to run guys over. Because if he knows that he's the X factor in this game for this Eagles offense, and he knows that just that little bit of extra juice can maybe give him that extra inch to get up the sideline and score a touchdown, I truly believe that he, like I said, he's going to pour his heart out, and he's probably going to get away with it one time. I think he's going to break away for a long touchdown once in this game. I mean, unless the Chiefs totally sell out to stop him, which is highly likely, then he's going to break one out for a long one. And it's just up to him to basically allow his vision to thrive, to make the best possible decisions, because if his vision thrives, then it hasn't looked like anyone's been able to stop him. And I understand that the Chiefs defense is much better than the Rams. It's much better than the Commanders. And it's probably even better than the Packers. That Saquon still has an opportunity to completely change this game at any moment. So he's a key to success. And okay, now that we've gone through all of that context, let's talk about the Vegas projection, all right? So the Chiefs are favored by -1.5. There's an over-under of 48.5. So that comes out to a projection of Kansas City winning 25-23.5. Interesting. I can't remember, and I couldn't find whether or not the Eagles or Chiefs were favored last time, but I get the feeling that it went back and forth. -1 Eagles, -1 Chiefs, -2 Eagles, -1 Chiefs. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But it's been minus KC this whole time. So Vegas seems pretty confident that they're like, yeah, we already learned our lesson with this. Chiefs aren't going anywhere. They're going to come out with a win in this game. It's going to be close and it'll be entertaining, but it's going to be fun. Overall, do I think the actual like numbers, like the scores are accurate? I do. I think it is going to be somewhere around this because I don't think it's going to be as low scoring as the last game because, they're probably saving some tricks in those games. And, those tricks usually come out on offense and, result in some points. So I think it'll be close to that 21-17 score, except maybe add another field goal and touchdown to both teams. Not to both teams, one to each. So call it, I don't know, 24-24. Is that what that would be? Pretty much exactly what this is. So I do think the numbers are about accurate. I don't think it's going to be like 38-35 like it was last time. But hey, you never know what can happen in a second half. Did you make it this far straight through? I'm so proud of you. Now it's time for my take and my prediction. So I am a Giants fan, and I've hated nothing more really than watching Saquon on the Eagles this year. Believe me, it was rough when he signed. It was rough the first game. It was rough the whole season, and then the playoffs. I would have told you last year. I wish I had started this last year because we would have been having this McCaffrey conversation with Saquon, but running back is one of those positions where it is purely, not purely, but it is the most dependent on your athleticism. I would say like your production is most directly correlated with it because between athleticism and vision, that's pretty much what makes up a running back, right? Because outside of their control is the blocking, right? So if I put a running back in a vacuum, I want maximum athleticism and I want maximum vision, and that's your 99 overall right there. And that's always what I saw Saquon as. So to see him actually in that situation makes me happy on one end, but on the other end, he's on the Eagles. So I hate to see it. And it's not the first time either that one of my favorite players went to the Eagles. You can see AJ Brown. When he was a rookie or when he was in the draft process and that picture of him and DK Metcalf came out, I was like, oh my God, who is this other guy, AJ Brown? I follow him. He's amazing. I got his jersey. Boom, goes to the Eagles. Can't have nothing nice in life. But hey, even despite all this, I almost find myself rooting for the Eagles. You can call me crazy, but I have done this before. I have done this before. Back in 2017, the underdog story with Nick Foles, they were going up against Brady. It wasn't quite the same thing as this, but it was pretty close. Jalen Hurts is not a backup, but he doesn't get the same amount of respect as other elite quarterbacks. So you have that narrative. And then you have the dynasty of the Patriots to the Chiefs. So it's a very similar thing. And I didn't root for the Eagles last time because I'm not saying I didn't think they deserved to be there, but I don't think they earned it quite as much as other teams have earned it, right? Beating the Giants and 49ers the way they did, your regular season being a bit of a cakewalk. I wasn't satisfied, but this time around I am satisfied. I think this Eagles team, you could call me late to the party or whatever, but yeah, they've proven fully to me that they deserve to be here and that they've got a real shot at winning this. And that was something I realized after the Super Bowl is I didn't think it was gonna be that close. So I'll say I'm like a 51-49. I'm still not like, rooting for them hard. If the Chiefs win, I'll totally accept it. But I am slightly rooting for the Eagles. So this time is different. Since they've beaten elite competition since that Super Bowl, and they've gone through adversity, and they've gotten better, despite all this, they are still underdogs in this game. It looks like, they're clearly the better team and all that. So it just makes you wonder. So I just want to once again hone in on one of my key factors here. Last Super Bowl, the Eagles running backs averaged 2.6 yards per carry. Now, they did have quite a bit of rushing yards in that game because of Jalen. He had a pretty good day on the ground. But in the end of the day, that's not what they needed from their running backs, and that's something I didn't expect. Is Spagnuolo dared them to pass, and sure, Jalen was able to scamper on the ground with his legs. It's not as consistent and reliable as just being able to run the ball with your running back. When they won in 2023, it was because they had DeAndre Swift go for 6.3 yards per carry. They shut out Kansas City in the second half. So all this gets me thinking, okay, they lost the Super Bowl because they didn't have a good running back to take advantage of their line. And the Chiefs sold out and no one could make a play. But then they won when they had Swift, even though they had a terrible season that year because he had 6.3 yards per carry, and they were able to chew up the clock, keep the ball away from Mahomes, and shut out the game. So enter Saquon. He's got a chance to do what Josh Allen couldn't do, keep the ball away from the Chiefs and keep it away from Mahomes. And as I mentioned time and time again, that's the only way you're going to be able to beat him is by don't even give him the opportunity. So all this being said, you're like, oh, is this Giants fan thinking about picking the Eagles? I am thinking about it. The last time I genuinely rooted for them, it actually did happen. They pulled it off and they beat the dynasty. And I think if Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley both have good days, the Eagles should win. That means no turnovers. Saquon above 4.5 yards per carry and Hurts like 2 to 3 touchdowns with like 250 total yards. And of course, there's a lot of different things that can happen there. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel. But somehow, every time the Chiefs are a worse roster, especially on offense, as I mentioned earlier in this video, they're still 3-1. And the one time they lost wasn't even just because they played Brady. It was because their offensive line was destroyed. And they beat that Bucks team earlier in the year when they were healthy. So it's like this Chiefs team really seems like it doesn't have a kryptonite, right? I mentioned the other quarterbacks they beat was Jimmy G. Okay, Hurts is better. Brock Purdy, okay, Hurts is better. This Eagles team, probably better. But I'd give the coaching staff edge to those 49ers teams. And Hurts has definitely been improved, and Saquon helped stabilize the rhythm of the offense for him. So in my opinion, outside of that Bucks Super Bowl, this is the Chiefs' biggest challenge. And it's going to be very close, like last year. But they've turned it back on. And they look like they're going to do it again. I mean, I mentioned in my power rankings videos, week 16 and 17, that I'm getting nervous about this Chiefs team because it's always right when they need to. They turn it on. And I've had a tendency to pick against the Eagles and the Chiefs. I have that same urge for both of these teams. And I've gone back and forth countless times about this. But I'm telling you right now, I don't have a preference. And I think the winner will be the Kansas City Chiefs. I know. Very shocking. It's not a knock against the Eagles, too. And I totally think they can win. As I mentioned, I think if Jalen Hurts and Saquon accomplish those two things, it's kind of a sure bet that they will win. But you know what? It's just the devil magic. I just think something's just going to go wrong. In these coin toss games with the Chiefs where it is close, it's very rare that Mahomes isn't going to take advantage of whatever opportunity there is to win. So that means the Eagles' lead would have to be large enough, like the Buccaneers' lead was, in order for them to win this game. I mean, the Chiefs were falling behind in that Buccaneers game, but they really had no chance to crawl back because they couldn't block to, get out of that. The Buccaneers knew they needed the pass, and they knew the offensive line was hurt. And even though Mahomes was playing amazing, they just couldn't get it done. It was too chaotic. There was too much going on. So my score prediction is going to be 28-24. Chiefs win. So the Eagles will not be quite successful enough to stop this, Chiefs team, even though they will probably win time of possession. 2 of these touchdowns or 17 of these points of the Chiefs could all come in the fourth quarter. That's just something you have to remember, okay? It could be 24-14 Eagles in the fourth quarter and the Chiefs come all the way back and win. It could be 24-10, and I wouldn't even be shocked. But that's going to be my take. So as I said, I'm taking the over. I'm taking Kansas City -1.5. And like I said, it's not a knock against Saquon. It's not a knock against Jalen. It's not a knock against the Eagles. I think they're a team that has earned the right to be here. They have a chance. But ultimately, I just think somehow, some way, the Chiefs are going to find a way to win this game or make the Eagles lose it. All right. So we've had the full NFL season, the regular season, the postseason, and now we're here for the Super Bowl, and I'm giving you guys my prediction. So what that means is there's just one more video left for this full season, not including off season and whatnot, for the pocket. And for yours truly, your great host, who cares about you all very much and appreciates you. It truly has just been an amazing experience, and I just want to thank you all for making it possible. It has been really, really bizarre. I've never done anything in my life like this before. But if you've ever thought about doing something on YouTube, I would strongly encourage you to do it because it has been so much fun and there's been so much I have learned. But back to football. Yes, I am still pumped for the Super Bowl. As much as I just want to see a loser, there is going to be a winner. You could call it a safe bet, but I really did think about this one pretty hard. Um, Put a lot of time preparing for it, and I think the Eagles do have what it takes, but that doesn't mean that it's going to happen. A lot of teams have had what it takes before, but that's not quite enough. You need to have like an excessive advantage, is what it seems like the Buccaneers did. All right, so that's going to be all for this one. Stay tuned for that reaction video after Super Bowl Sunday. You got a whole week to watch this one, and I appreciate you all very much. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in that next one. Peace out.